Hey, Rachel here from the NOIC Godcast, where we offer wacky wisdom weekly from God's Word. This whole month, we're taking a look at our theme for camp, Brick by Brick. Today, we're going to talk about the cost of living the Christian life. So, the building process of our lives will always come at a cost. While in Egypt, Israel was faced with a decision: stay a slave and enjoy Egypt, or find freedom and surrender their straw. God's desire for his people was a process of removal, the taking away of what separated them from him. Yet, Israel wanted what was easy instead of what was eternal. They sought comfort instead of conformity. The lifelong building process of a Christian includes both the process of building and bulldozing, removing and reconstructing. Like Israel, we will fight the foreman of our faith and masterpiece he desires to frame us into, or will we surrender the master plan of the carpenter from Nazareth?
So can we unpack a little bit where we're at? We're not that comfortable.
That was interesting unpacking.
That one,
I thought you were doing a magic trick.
So on Tuesday of camp, our theme is bartered bricks. Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about Israel and Egypt. And so the Bible kind of opens up with this dramatic story of Israel being enslaved in Egypt, and they're making bricks, and they use straw to do so. Well, we know the story, and as they're making bricks, they're being beaten and treated poorly. And so the Bible says that God hears the cry of his people. He hears their burden. He hears their grief. And so God's like, you know what? I hear you. I will do something about it. And so, we know the story. God sends Moses to Israel in slavery, and Moses says, "Let my people go." And nothing. Just like that. Nothing happens. And so I thought that was rather swell, but apparently I'm not made for Broadway. So as Moses says this, Israelites think, oh, good, God finally hears us. We're getting out of here. Instead, what actually happens is Pharaoh takes away the straw from the Egyptians, which makes their brick building even harder, a more difficult thing instead of an easier thing. And so that's what you're talking about here, is that a lot of times we think that building brick by brick is just going to be, oh, goody, he's going to give me all the pieces. We're going to put it up. It's going to be easy, schmeezy, lemon squeezy. And instead, Aldi's version. And so instead, a lot of times what happens is he actually takes away from our life before he adds to our life. And so there's this bartered brick process where we're like, I want to be freed, but I don't want to lose my straw.
Right. I
want what's good, but not if it comes by what's bad. And yet the Bible always tells us the process is God uses all things for good. So many stories in the Bible, Joseph and Job and the Israelites in different places, we find where horrible things happen, and yet God uses it for good. And so the removal of straw is actually part of the building process.
Yeah. So that sets us up for the question. So we're a people of hacks and shortcuts, right? Like we all want to have things as easy as possible, always seeking to make things easy for ourselves. So throughout each of your lives, what is one of the lies the world has told you that is an easy way of doing something versus the way that God would want you to do it?
Making money.
Yeah, there's no easy way to make money.
Because the world is pretty much drills in our head like your success is based on how much your income is. Not even what you do with your income, is that if you make this much money, you are successful. You know what I mean? And then that, of course, leads to people telling you, well, if you did this or this or this, it's so much easier to make money. Like, why are you sweating? You know what I mean? Like, there's an easier way to do this. And I can't tell you how many times someone in my life has come along and said, there's an easier way to do this, or you're doing that all wrong. I did it this way, and it was easier. With God, it's a process. You know what I mean? Anything that involves a process has no shortcuts to it, because the process in itself requires you to do things a certain way. You know what I mean? If you skip, it's like building a house. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you say, well, I'm going to skip the frame and just stack up this drywall. You know what I mean? Yes, my house will be done faster, but would your house last as long?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think we've been learning around here that God is more interested in the workman than the work.
yes.
He's more interested in what he's doing in you than the end result of a built house. It's the
Yes.
building process. And that's kind of what we're talking about the whole week of camp is a lot of times we're focused on, I want to have this house finished. And he's like, yeah, but it's the process of getting to the house, the building brick by brick that I'm really interested in. Because truth is, we aren't going to have a finished product till we die.
Right,
So
yeah.
why rush the process? It's really the building process that he cares about. So, hello, friend. Hey. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, man.
Hey, hi. Yeah, okay.
We looked at that last time he was here.
I forgot already.
No, I do think I've actually been listening to a lot of like similar things where it talks about, you know, kind of to what Kevin said is that God cares about it getting done, but he also cares about how it's done.
Yes.
Right. That's that's something that we need to always remember, right? Because whether it's ministry or whether it's like for me, you know, I've shared like my burden is always wanted to share the gospel. Like that's always at the forefront of my mind. And sometimes that can get in the way of what God wants to get done because God is not just working on the person that I'm sharing with, but he's also working on me as well.
Absolutely.
And that's, I mean, our God is so powerful or mighty that he's able to do both of those things at once.
Yep.
Where I'm thinking, you know, I'm just one track minded.
Yeah.
And God is like, no, there's more layers to this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
God's more than an 8-track.
Yeah.
I think for me, so it's kind of a lame answer, but
Most of them are.
They're brother and sister. They can.
yeah, we're feeling that today.
Yeah.
What was the question? The question was, you answer that and I'll answer that.
What is the question?
Yeah.
Where have you listened to the world that told you it's easy versus doing it God's way?
So let me answer that.
Okay. Do tell.
So I think for me, over the course of my life, it's been where true happiness comes from. I think that's something we all like feel. I think all of us fall for that, you know, that pitfall of, oh, just do this or just spend time here, do this, and you'll have happiness. And yet the reality is only true joy comes from God himself. And so a lot of times finding true joy is a lot more hard. It's a lot more difficult than temporary happiness.
Right.
And so like we can sell out for the cheap stuff, or we can endure for what's really valuable and eternal, which is joy. I mean, joy is a fruit of the Spirit. It's an eternal thing. It's a brick, I would say, that we can build our life with and something that will last forever. But a lot of times we settle for happiness. So, you know, fill in your blank there. Happiness looks different on everybody. Yeah.
Right.
But I think that would be fun.
And that like makes me think of visually like building your house with real bricks, real joy, versus like substitute like cardboard bricks.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you don't have the true joy.
Right.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it would be a soggy hot mess.
Yes, it would burn.
It would. Huff and puff and blow your house down.
Okay.
Well, houses burned down anyway. But anyway, that's beside the point. So, as I listen to you guys' answers, after question is, has anyone ever told you like a hack or a shortcut? The hack or shortcut is Jesus. You know what I mean? Like the world really wants you to jump through hoops and, you know what I mean, run an obstacle course for them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Whereas we just took it as, no, I'm going to give it to God. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Jesus is like the most easily difficult solution to every question. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, you're right. He is that's the easy route to go Jesus instead of all those hoops they want you to jump through. But ultimately, it's also the hardest route to choose Jesus because you're laying everything down. And so it's like...
we have so much in the way.
Yeah, exactly.
I would use the term, it's simple.
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
Yeah,
right?
I would
simple
agree.
Doesn't always mean easy.
Right.
I've heard you say that so many times.
Good job.
I say it a lot.
Yeah.
Good job, hey you.
Somewhere.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought it was tattooed on you somewhere.
I said, hey you. It said, hey me. He didn't get it.
I ignored it.
He got it. Yeah. Just not going
to go to your original question. So we've been talking about mentorship, and that's something that I've been blessed to always have that in my Christian walk. From the time that I gave my life to Christ, to have that. And at the time I wasn't aware, but mentorship or discipleship, I had that in my life. And I didn't understand at first what was going on. And my thought was that the person who was discipling me or mentoring me, he was building bridges for me so that I wouldn't have to go through some of the pitfalls that he went through. what I didn't understand that was happening is he was telling me, no, you're going to go through this, right? I can't build those bridges for you, you know, and it wouldn't benefit you any if I did. But that's what we try to do, right? Like even as I think as racing, you know, my sons, I want them to be able to be in a place where they're further along by the time they become parents than I was. So I want to build bridges for them, and we should to a certain point, right? But in our Christian walk, or you know, or our daily growth, we can't avoid some of the pitfalls. You know, we're gonna have to go through that process through.
Yeah, because the truth is, if you do dodge those pitfalls, there will be new pitfalls. Like there are going to, like, that's literally a part of the building process, is enduring your pitfalls or enduring those. Yeah, exactly. And if you went on every bridge, you would be a very weak Christian because you never endured the difficulty.
You didn't need faith for anything because you always had the bridge to walk over.
But so back to the point was, you know, I was under the misunderstanding that that's what this person was trying to do for me. And he never said that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that was never the point. He was just making aware, like, hey, this is going to come alongside the road. Be aware of that. Yeah. And if you do fall, you know, this is how you get back up. Yep. And so, but the world doesn't teach that, right? Like you said, they want to give you.
Yeah, they're putting up signs to jump in the pit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, and I mean, back to the straw, like that is the world's mantra. Like, hold tight to your straw, the things that make you happy, the things that make your life easy, cling to the straw, sell all you have to get more straw, go door to door selling straw, like do all you can for the straw. And yet God comes along and says, give me your straw. I'll make your life better, but it's going to be a lot difficult to get there. And so, straw.
I can imagine myself like, here, take this, please. I'll keep the rest.
We all do that, though. It's like, you mean that one?
Here you go, guys.
Like a scarecrow walking out.
As you're leaving a trail of straw everywhere you go, you know, so.
But have you guys seen those Christians who hold to the straw, like cling to the straw? I mean, I have. And like, yes, there's happiness. They're holding to something in hopes of that happiness, their straw. But then you look at how much they're losing because they're holding on to that. You know what I mean? They're losing so much joy and so much fulfillment and contentment and eternal things, life that lasts. And so there's always a cost to straw.
I think that because God is like the one-stop shop for everything. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like God would be like, Walmart. Because you can get anything you need at Walmart. Like you can go there and do your groceries.
You haven't been to our Walmart, have you?
Guys, it's not like Walmart.
I can't think of like another store like that has like groceries and.
Maybe he's more like Amazon. No, I don't know. That's not good.
Menards.
You say big. No, never mind.
But anyway, like the things the world offers you are just like Foot Locker. You can only go there to get a limited
I'm getting
amount
very
of stuff.
confused.
Okay, like what I'm saying is that because God supplies us with all of our needs, and the world focuses on one particular
So God's like a shopping mall.
need. Yes, yes. Like you can go to God for everything, where the world, like for example, if you feel like if you're, I don't know, broke and lonely, okay, the world can only fix one of those two things. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, I will give you a spouse, but you're still going to be broke, or I can give you financial, but you know what I mean? Where with God, he can give you everything, but people are clutching to that. At least I have this. You know what I mean? I think that's a mentality of the world.
So this is year 14 of the NYC.
It's
correct.
Kind of the gray area.
Yes, it really is. We'll say 14.
Okay.
A gray 14. And I would say, like, what would you say? 80% of those 14 years have been on surrender.
Yeah.
Like, very much packaged differently, different shapes and sizes and colors. But it's always been surrender, has really just been our banner. And probably so. Like, I love that. I love that. But really, that's what this theme comes down to. Like, I think we talked about this some last week, but I think we look at this theme, building brick by brick. I'm like, ooh, we get to build and we get a house out of the deal, and it's. But you got to start with minus before you get to addition, subtraction before addition, and so there's this order of operations that God wants to do before He can build our lives, and so. I think we talked last week about a lot of the saints gone by would call the surrendered life, the abundant life, the exchanged life. And what they meant by that was you have to give something to get something. And that's what God says. I mean, Jesus steps on the scene and he says, unless you pick up your cross, follow me, you can't be my disciple. Unless you lay all down, you can't be my disciple. And so all throughout the Gospels, we see this subtraction process. We see this call to laying down, this giving up of straw. And yet in our modern day
culture of Christianity that we live in, it's all about addition. Me, give, add. That's not biblical. That's not Christianity.
Because
Christianity starts with subtraction.
Right, because in the worldly view of Christianity, like you said, it's all about me, and you're just piling onto yourself. And clearly, like, you want more of God and less of you. So you're really doing the exact opposite because we are finite in what we can do. You know what I mean? So if we fill ourselves up with worldly things, you know what I mean? Like, we're literally leaving no room for God. I think you posted something earlier. Oh, I know you posted something earlier this week. I read it clearly from you, where it was.
She's looking at me or you?
Josh.
Okay.
Miguel doesn't post anything.
Are you on Facebook?
I am on Facebook.
Are you really?
Yeah.
How long have I known you?
I don't want to tell you. I don't want to document it.
He posted a picture of like his kid lifting weights with him. That's like the last thing I remember. But anyway,
That one's you. That one.
Everybody remembers that. But like you posted something earlier this week that said God leaves no one unfulfilled except people who are full of their self or something.
That was Jamie's quotes from last week's podcast. But yes, I did share that.
Okay.
It was better online. I understand.
Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
but
DL Moody.
I don't think she ever was that her quote.
Yep,
actually,
that was her quote.
Okay, all right. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's the subtraction because you must reduce
Yep.
yourself, what you want, basically,
Yeah.
so God can give you what He wants.
Yeah.
And
So
have a right
if
time
you
with that.
if you are picking up what we're laying down, last week we talked about banished bricks and how it started with the Tower of Babel and how God obliterates what they tried to build. And so you got your life and you're trying to build your life and God scatters it and says no. This Tuesday, this week, we're talking about bartered bricks, which is surrendering. That's different from obliterating, right? Do we see the difference? Yes. It doesn't seem different, but it is different. And so the second day is bartered bricks. It's those things in your life, they may be good things, but if you have clutched them, they're in a very dangerous place when it comes to building your life via God. And so Tuesday is talking about surrendering, laying down those things. And it could be, there are churches who clutch straw in the way they do their services or in, structure, kind of music or different things like that. You can clutch that straw as if it is as important as God himself. I actually read this illustration this week and I plan to use this very, very much. I love this so much. Do you guys know what a sailboat is?
I've heard of them.
You've heard of them.
Yeah.
So on a mystical place called the lake, there's a thing called sailboats. And so basically the analogy was this.
Too, just saying,
Really? We live on the lake. Okay. So a sailboat, you have the boat and then you have the sail. The thing is, the boat can't go anywhere, even with the sail, unless you have what?
Wind.
And so what they said was God himself is the wind. The way we catch God, if you will, is the sail. And so like the church services, the way we do services, the way we do ministry, the way we do children's ministry, that's the sail. But ultimately that sail is useless unless God is in that. And so that's what I'm saying is a lot of times we hold our straw as that sail. We hold tightly to the way we do things, the things we do, when it's really no use without God blowing that. Does that make sense?
So very clearly here we are talking about Christians, right? Born again, not people who say they're Christians, not people who live what I call like the Christian culture, who just kind of goes. We're talking about Christians, and this is something that's I'm being convicted about even now as I speak. Is how foolish are we that we begin with Jesus, we trust in Him, our salvation, our eternal soul, right? But then we turn around and we put our faith in every other thing, whether it's church services or whether it's whatever. And we don't trust Jesus with those things either. And that's really what we're saying, right? We trusted him for our salvation, and yet we don't want to let go of the things where he's trying to cleanse us of these things. He's trying to sanctify us, right? To be more like him. Doesn't that just sound foolish?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm convicted even as we say. Thank you for inviting me.
I think that the year 2020 specifically pointed out straw in a lot of people and a lot of churches' lives. We saw where we were more interested in the sail than the wind, more interested in the straw than the brick or building. And so I think that really put a finger on a lot of things. Like Miguel said, there really was a purifying that came out of 2020 where a lot of churches did change priorities. But that doesn't mean it was enjoyable. Like it was a painful process. And I think like with what Miguel said, we are Christians. I think as long as you're alive, there should be. Why did that sound like I'm from Wisconsin? As long as you're alive.
How people from Wisconsin say? Anyway.
Minnesota. Are they the same? Are they the same place? I'm convinced. You jumped the water that time. What were we even saying? No, I think that as long as we're alive, as long as we're a Christian, until we get to heaven, there will always be a new straw that you're grasping that needs laid down. Mm-hmm. And I think as soon as you conquer that one, God's like, what's that straw in the corner? Yeah. What's that in your pocket? Yeah. I say straw. I want to build your life. Give me the straw. And so I think that it's a mistake for a lot of Christians to think, oh, I laid down my straw years ago. I'm good to go. No, my friend, look in your pocket. Yeah. There's straw there.
How'd I get there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I used to work at McDonald's a long, long time ago.
You're not that old.
Yeah. So we used to get in trouble for eating the chicken nuggets. And I remember this time.
I like where this is going.
Very clearly, the manager was like, Miguel, are you eating something? And I had a mouthful of chicken nuggets. And I was like, so good. That's what we do.
That is exactly what we do.
Miguel, what do you have over there? Nothing. And I'm over here building like.
He's shaped like a chicken nugget.
But that's what we do.
Exactly like, what we do.
And God is like, no, you got it over there, dude.
Yes,
that's it.
Yes.
Isn't it? But like we live a life of surrender.
Yeah.
Okay. So like it's almost like we. I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but it's almost as if we generate straw in some kind of way because it's like I surrender everything.
So Kevin, hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
We're made of the dirt of the ground, and we produce straw. I don't know.
There's something to that. Actually, we're made from dust because dirt has a purpose. Dust has
technically,
no purpose.
we're made out of the leftover of dirt because the word is ash, really, in the Genesis. But go on. I'm distracted on purpose. Okay.
Good job distracting because I almost forgot what I was going to say. So anyway, so like we can think that, you know what I mean, I surrendered everything. Like I have nothing left, Lord. You know what I mean? And then he's like, what's that in your ear? Mm-hmm. And we're like, more straw, you know what I mean? So it's almost as if like we can't we're not always saying, you know, I'm going to hide this piece of straw from God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
sometimes it's not intentional.
Right. Like we could be totally, like we think we got rid of all of it.
Which is back to, straw can be a good thing. Like, you know what I mean? So I was thinking of the story, I don't know if you listened to the podcast of the Isaac, but we know the story of Isaac and Abraham. And like Isaac had become straw in Abraham's life, if you will, if you allow the analogy. And so what did God say? Lay down your straw. Now, ultimately, he got to keep the straw. But it was the proving process of his willingness to lay down the straw.
Yes.
And so it's the same in our lives. Like sometimes it's not, there can be sin that's straw and you need to lay that down.
Right.
That thing will bite you. But there's also good things in our lives that God's like, if you would give me that, it'll be much better. It'll be painful to give it up, but it will be so much better if you give it up.
And here's the beautiful part about that story, right? As you read it, you know, we all focus on like Isaac was going to. Mm-hmm. So God did not want Isaac. God wanted Abraham.
Absolutely.
And that's the beautiful part, right? Yeah. God wants, he doesn't care, you know, if let's say, you know, my family is the straw. Mm-hmm. It's not like he doesn't care about my family, but he cares about me so much that he wants to show me a better way, right? Yeah. But we don't see that because we're so one focus minded.
Because our mouths full of chicken nuggets.
So, that's going to be the analogy. I'm glad I resonated.
I sure did. I felt that deeply. So I was thinking too, you're doing a wonderful job today. You really are. I was thinking about being a parent and how often are we...
I'm sorry. Just the way you said it, like, I was thinking about becoming a parent.
I was thinking, what do you suggest? Recommend 5 out of 5.
You already are a parent. By the time you decide to be one.
I was thinking about being a parent and like Miguel's McDonald's analogy. How often do we go to our kid and we're like, is that a nugget in your mouth? And they're like, whoa. And yet they see nugget crumbs all over our mouth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think like that is a lot of times what parents, I'll say this, parents, but also youth leaders, Sunday school teachers, pastors, we're so do what's right, lay it down, you surrender, you get this right, you serve God, all the while we've got nugget crumbs on our face. Mm-hmm. And so what you're saying is Jesus is the best thing ever. He's worth surrendering it all for. But I've not yet done it. You do it. Do you see what I'm saying? And that really, I mean, we heard it this morning in the Sunday morning message. hypocrisy drives people out of the church faster than anything.
Right.
And there will always be hypocrisy in the church as long as there's people in the church. We know that. But our goal is to always be the same in all places to all people and to never expect of others what we've not yet done ourselves. And so may we be mindful of being that manager. Make sure, we have laid down our nuggets before we ask others to lay down their nuggets.
I seen him eat chicken nuggets too, though. He set the standard.
That's a great point. I don't stutter, but everything on the podcast I stutter. But that's a great point to say, like, we have to live our lives a certain way because once someone knows you're a Christian, okay, they pay more attention to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like sometimes it's like for a bad reason. It'd be like, oh, Miguel said he's a Christian. Well, let me trip him up and prove to him. You know what I mean? Or really, it's more like, let me show the world what a Christian is. So I'm going to trip up Miguel. Okay, but it's up to Miguel to be able to, you know what I mean? Still, no matter what. Yeah. Portray himself as a Christian, and then eventually the person who's trying to trip you up will be like, there might be something to what you're saying.
So what do you guys think about this? What do you think about being honest about your nugget needs?
Oh, he's gonna run with that one.
I really like that a lot. I really do. We may have to rewrite some prayer stations to fit chicken nuggets in now. I'll have a little baker back there just baking chicken nuggets.
You don't bake chicken nuggets, you fry.
You're correct. But just being honest, like, Juliet sees me with nugget crumbs and I just told her not to eat nuggets. And I'm like, you know what, Daddy was hungry. But spiritually just telling her, you know what, I recognize I need to lay this down. Daddy is not perfect. Daddy needs to surrender. And I hope that you'll come to a place where you want Jesus more than this and you'll surrender too. I think we live in such a day where we do try to put on that facade of I've got this all together. And they are watching. But do you know what pops their hypocrisy bubble faster than anything? Transparency and honesty. We should live above reproach. We should lay our nuggets down. But we should also be honest that we are human. The good that I do not. And the bad that I do not, I do. Close. Something like I'm that. Working.
It's the message.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you were trying to say.
Good try.
Any clarification?
But do you see what I'm saying? Like, we are human. We are flesh. We will fail. We don't want to. We want Jesus, and we recognize he's the greatest of all. He's worthy of laying all things down, but Daddy's not perfect. Josh is not perfect. The preacher's not perfect. I also am in this struggle with you, and I see and I understand what you're going through.
I think for me, that is something that, that I guess a goal for me is, like what the pastor said, it was a message that I've been dealing with since I started coming to church, right? How I feel the burden of making sure my children stay in church. You know what I mean? And the message was perfect this morning. But when my son looks back at his dad, I don't want him to say, my dad always thought he was perfect. Yeah. I want him to say, my dad fell down many times. So he had a front row seat to my mistakes. Yeah. But he saw that I kept getting up. Absolutely. And I continued. And not just the way that I was at church was the same way that I was at home. Yeah. And it's a struggle. Like you said, it's not easy. So building these bricks, Israel Christians, is not going to be easy, right? It's going to be hard, especially because now they took the straw away. So now you got to do more work. Mm-hmm. But it's so worth it.
Absolutely.
It's so worth it.
So that kind of sets me up for the next question.
I thought we were done.
No, we have more.
I'm sorry, I would have not talked nearly as much.
So, though we shouldn't take the easy instead of eternal, this doesn't necessarily mean that we should just live a hard life making things miserable all the time. I think that God can call us to the option that does feel a lot harder, but that shouldn't equal misery. When we're giving up things for God, it shouldn't just be miserable, or it might be pointless and not what God actually was wanting from us, kind of like the Isaac and illustration. He didn't want Isaac. He was wanting it was the heart that he was interested in. So is there a time in your lives where you were miserable trying to sacrifice, but it might not have been what God really wanted?
Do you have an answer?
No, go ahead.
No, you're first. You didn't answer the last question.
The person doesn't answer the question.
Of course they do.
You go first this time, Josh.
I'm not ready.
Oh, okay.
I call that a Tuesday in my life. No, it's so again, because of just the way that God works in my life, is the burden for me is how do I work in the ministry while also being present for my family. Like those two things are always, just at the forefront of my mind. And what I find myself doing is sometimes I'm ignoring the ministry for my family, or sometimes I'm ignoring my family for the ministry. Mm-hmm. And if God has called me to do this, he's going to make this both work in my life. Mm-hmm. And one is not going to get ignored. So if I'm doing it in my own strength, one of them is going to get neglected and I'm going to be miserable to that point, right? Mm-hmm. But if I'm doing this in God's power, they're both going to be taken care of. That doesn't mean it's not going to be laborsome, right? But it does mean that it's going to be, both of them are going to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. And that's such a hard balance for me.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think that there have been many times in the last 14 years of NOIC when I thought I was doing ministry for the Lord, but it was very evident that I was miserable in doing it. And people told me I was miserable to be around and doing it. And that was fact that I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. And what's interesting is with Israel, straw really wasn't the issue. I mean, Miguel already said this with Abraham, but it was their heart that was the problem. Mm-hmm. So think about what is really happening in this scene, this bartering brick scene. Israel, let's say Israel is a Christian, right? They're a person, an individual. Rachel is Israel. And someone walks up to Rachel and says, if you will give me straw, which is literally leftover grass, like it's waste nothing, it's worth nothing, of no value, it blows away, it's fire. Like, if you'll give me straw, I'll give you God. And they were upset about that. They threw a hissy fit like a tantrum child because they lost their straw, even though God was promised. That's all of us. And that's really, that is really Tuesday in a nutshell of camp. But we all do that. There's always something where I don't want to lay that down, but you'll get God. But I don't want to lay that down, but you'll get God. And so with me, there have been many times in the last 14 years where camp has been that. It's been my, I'm surrendering, I'm doing this for the Lord, and yet wrong motives, wrong heart. And so I really wasn't doing it for the reasons I thought I was, and it was miserable and it was difficult. But I can really, and you probably can test this more than anybody, I can really say that there's a peace, a joy, a contentment in the work we do. Mm-hmm. We work a lot on camp. It is a very laborious, and I would say because we've surrendered it, maybe the work's even more now. It's like the straw's been taken away, but there's such a peace and joy and contentment, and it's simpler, right? Mm-hmm. It's harder, but it's simpler now this way because we did surrender that. Yeah.
The beautiful part about it too is that, if you imagine what Israel was going through at this time, Moses literally came and said hey, God wants to free you. Yeah. Right? So I'm going to go talk to this Pharaoh because that is God's plan for you, to be free. So then he goes, and the Pharaoh's like, nope. And I'm going to make the work even harder. Yeah. It's like, hey, I got bad news for you. The Pharaoh said no, but God wants to free you. Yeah. So you're going to go through this, but the creator of everything wants you to be free. Yeah. And so we looked at our lives, right? We already know what his plan for us is, what he wants us to do, right? But there's going to be a process in it. Yep. And you're like...
Pharaoh said no.
Yeah.
Good news. So we're actually going to talk about that Tuesday camp before we get to the straw part. We're going to talk about how Israel, right, Israel's the Christian, but they find themselves under the thumb of Pharaoh. Who is Pharaoh? He's this worldly ruler who really has no right in their life, but who takes command of their life, who's holding them hostage. And so really in the Christian life, that's exactly what a new convert goes through. They're saved. They are God's. They belong to him. And yet there's someone else who has their thumb on their life. There's someone else trying to call the shots and command their life who has no right. And so there's this wicked ruler of the world that they have to be set free from. A lot of times that comes by surrender, laying down the straw.
That's, wait a minute. Anyway,
and she took the question away. She thinks we're smart.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay.
It's a long one.
So basically, if you're I don't have any kids, so I
you want
sympathize.
One of mine?
Excuse me.
You want one of mine?
No,
which one?
No, not the new one. I want to see how this one turns out.
Yeah, I'll take the unborn when he has a chance. But
that just took a dark turn. I don't know.
After he asked something about the ink pen,
Jonah, who dropped the pen? You or Jamie?
Jamie dropped the pen.
Jamie, she dropped the pen, and Kevin asked Jonah, "Can you pick up the pen?" So Jonah not only steps on it, but steps on it twice.
He was like kicking it away from me.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Sounds a little proud. But also, Jonah, no.
But when you find yourself, okay, so we all go through this. At least I hope you guys go through it too, where it's like, I'm going to do this for the Lord. And we start doing it, and God's looking at us like, I don't know why you put my name on that. But it's not for me. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I see what you're doing, and I didn't tell you to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, Lord, like, help me. Like, this is impossible. And he's looking at you like, that's not what I told you to do.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think that when you find yourself, like, struggling, that's a good time to check the messenger. You know what I mean? Be like, hey, I think I'm doing this right. Am I? And God's like, no, that's not what I said. Do this instead. And we're like, oh, so wait, that's going to take longer. And he's like, I know.
Exactly.
But it will be easier. You know what I mean? Like the other project looks shorter, but it's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
You're going to sweat a lot.
Yeah.
Where this, it may be longer and it may seem harder, but I got you.
Yep.
On this one, you know what I mean? Where this other one is like, you're pretty much on your own because you're not doing, you know what I mean? What I said do. So often, like, I have a heart for the lost. And a lot of times I'm like, wow, that person is so lost. Like, I need to like intervene. You know what I mean? And God's like, there he goes again. You know what I mean? And it's not that the person shouldn't, like, I shouldn't speak to the person, okay? But, like, it's like God is like, no, that's not what I taught you how to do it. Like, you're showboating all on your own now. You know what I mean?
So that actually fits perfectly into the story. Because do you know what happens before Moses comes to Pharaoh? He tries to free them one Egyptian at a time. Literally, he kills an Egyptian in the desert. He thinks, oh, that'll free him. And that's what he did. He tries to put God's name, like he had a burden for his people and tried to fulfill God's work through his own efforts. And it did not end up well. He ends up on the backside of a desert for 40 years with his father-in-law's sheep, not even his own. And so that's exactly what you're talking about is a lot of times we try to do God's will via our efforts, and that never goes well.
Right. So to answer it is like, if you feel as though you're miserable doing God's work, then you're not doing God's work. I mean,
and that's a good indicator. Like you said, that's as you self-examine, as we should, right? That right there, I think is key to be like, yeah, there's something that's not right here. Yeah. I like that.
Thank you.
So what is your answer? You've had plenty of time.
I mean, probably camp is probably one of the biggest ones. We've done it in our own effort and our own strength, and then
Let's not do that again.
But yeah, that's not a good time.
Yeah, let's not do that again. No, actually, that year was fun. I would think so. No, it was other years.
God's dog has a way of getting us there.
No, not even that
A little
year.
before that,
little
too.
before that, yeah.
What year was the tornado?
17.
18.
No, 17.
17.
It was 17.
Yeah.
That year was fairly good, mostly.
So today's considerable quote is, "We are never losers from doing the will of the Lord,"
That's a good one.
by George Muller.
George Muller.
So the feature content for today is "Build My Life" by Barrett.
I was curious how you'd say that.
Barrett.
Barrett.
So Miguel,
Yes.
what item should they bring to camp?
Last week was straw. So this week is,
We did bricks and Legos.
yeah.
So he listens. He knows.
Does look at him.
Bring a stick. A small stick. I don't want like a big branch. I don't want a big tree log. Bring a stick.
Bring a stick.
A stick like
Just like a twig.
He was too prepared.
He was
for
too
that.
prepared. Yeah, that was
No
rather.
fun.
I thought
Catch
it was a
me
chicken
up.
nugget.
yeah.
But that's
He's
okay.
like, I'm guest
Mold
star.
chicken nugget.
Pre-chewed chicken.
Keep your chicken nuggets.
Bring a stick.
Bring a twig.
I'm guest hosting. They're gonna call on me.
Yeah,
I
he
just
was ready.
know
He was
it,
too
so.
ready for
He
it.
was too ready.
So the answer to last week, I don't know if anyone got it right, but the answer was D, Mandarin Chinese.
No one got it right.
No one got it
That
right?
I saw. Nope.
No? Okay.
You might have
I
said
saw wrong
B.
answers. Yeah, I saw wrong
Okay.
answers, but not.
So this week's question is, what temperature are bricks baked at?
Ooh, that's a fun
Ooh,
one.
that's a great question.
We
A,
would burn the cookies at these temperatures.
right? A, 350 to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. B, 500 to 800 degrees Fahrenheit. C, 1,000 to 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Or 1,800 to 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit.
Bonus points if you get Celsius.
Ooh. Then we won't know if it's right or not.
Yeah, then I'll have to go do some work to figure that out. So be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. What's the thing too?
Yep, they do that.
Well, we will see you very soon. Very
yes.
soon. Oh, we should go. We should
we
get
have
some
work
work
to
to do. Until next time. Bye.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Jamie is really the glue that holds all this together.
It is. It really is.
Jamie, come back.
I was thinking it, but I didn't want Kevin to judge me.